Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Mindbreeze podcast. We are thrilled to have with us today an expert in the world of AI education and customer experience. We have the privilege of chatting with the founder of Mindbreeze Academy, Patrick Geschwentner. Patrick brings to the table a wealth of knowledge and expertise. The visionary leadership he has not only shaped the Mindbreeze Academy, but has also become an integral part of the exceptional customer experience Mindbreeze is known for. Today, we're diving into the unique and revolutionary approach Mindbreeze Academy takes in delivering top-notch education. So let's dive right in. Thank you for coming, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
So following up on our last podcast with Michael, how can our audience, regardless of their technical expertise, take a do-it-yourself approach to implement the strategies discussed in episode 11 in creating comprehensive insights?
So in general, it's important that all the employees, all the trainees, they need to gain insight into two main areas: the conceptual part as well as the technical implementation. Conceptual part on the one hand is things such as project guide, best practices, use cases, architecture, big picture. Those things which need to be comprehended so that you can use a product at the end. And then the other side is the technical implementation. This I would like to split in three main areas. First of all, in the backend, which contains the configuration of the data source, where the data is coming from, how to get the data in within the inside engine, as well as enriching data. So for example, combining data from a database with data from a file share, or extracting the outdoor from in within a PDF document signature, or even using artificial intelligence, splitting document in different categories. For example, to say, I would like to split my documents into support documents, into invoices, and into others. This is all still in the backend. That is required so that you have the information ready to build as next step the front end. The front end is the interface which the end users will use to interact with the inside engine. And this is the step before the integration, which is then the last step to do. So what should you think about in the world of front end? The important thing in front ends is actually that we need to think about who will use it. So for example, one and the same data, a manager needs a top-level view. He needs to see charts, animations. He needs to see the return of investment immediately to understand how well his business unit or his department is running. Whereas the employee itself, for example, needs a technical deep dive into data he needs, for example, in the current production step he does in his business process. So this is the same data, but a different view. And then, of course, and this is to refer to Michael, one of the most important things is, of course, to integrate the whole thing at the end in an existing application in their portfolio. So, of course, in a time where customers have 20 or 30 or even more applications to use on a daily basis, it is always cumbersome to add another application as addition to the set of applications. So instead of that, it would be nice if an inside engine could just enrich the experience in within those applications by just being seamlessly integrated. So instead of switching between applications, you can just work, for example, in SharePoint, ServiceNow, Outlook, and you get contextual information at the point of the business process where you need it. And this is, so to say, the most important thing of getting these cool 360-degree holistic views, which Michael referred to before, that you have a UI which is tailored to your use case, and at the end also embedded there where the information is needed. And of course, to think a bit further, we also need to think about the devices at the end. So for example, will it be used on touch devices, on typical computers with mouse and keyboard, or will it use some very cool interfaces such as the computer brain interface, voice input, or haptic input? Also, those are things which you may consider. So it's very important to think about, on the one hand, who will see the information, what he needs, and in which way he will interact with the system to get the best experience out of there.
Okay, very interesting. So what, Patrick, unique features and methodologies sets Mindbreeze Academy apart?
So therefore, I would like to refer actually to a problem which most educational institutions and universities have. And this is that actually in the world of teaching, there was never really a revolution. So people teach in the same way for more than 100 years. And I thought and we thought we should change that. So what we did is we used the state-of-the-art digital technologies and learning methods to address most of the different learning types out there. So what is a learning type for the audience if they don't know that yet? So the classic way how teaching is done is by addressing visual and auditory learners. So to say those people which can comprehend and remember by seeing things, by hearing things and noises. Yeah? But there's much more learning types existing, such as, for example, the type reading and writing. He needs to read the information, maybe summarize it in his own words to comprehend and remember. Or the kinesthetic type, who don't want to get taught at all. He would like to just explore the technology and learn by try and error. Or the verbal and linguistic learner, who needs to do conversations, discussions with other employees and other trainees to really comprehend and remember. Or maybe even the one which is most of the time underestimated, the solitary and intrapersonal learner. This is those introverted people which most teachers think that they don't really take part of the class, or they don't understand what the teacher does, or they just think about something else. But actually those are most of the time the people which really do have the brains. They're just introverted, they just would like to learn those things on their own, but they really have their own learning method. And the problem is most educational institutions and universities don't address all those types. They address just the common ones, which is visual and auditory. This is the one thing. The second thing is that it is important that, especially in the world of business, you cannot just associate people within a training for 2 or 3 weeks. This is impossible. So you need to be able to pause a lecture and proceed. And this is also something what we implemented with these digital technologies. And of course, there is one more thing which I need to mention. What is the main reason why children actually sit in front of the TV and video games instead of learning? Well, pretty simple, the same reason why we grown-ups like to sit in front of TVs and video games instead of learning either. And this is because learning is usually boring. It's not entertaining. It does not give pleasure. And so what we do is we combine comedy as well as theater with learning. So after education at Mindbreeze, you feel entertained, you enjoyed yourself, but at the same time, you have learned information you need for using the product on a daily basis. And with this, it is not likely that people will watch their phones or their TVs because the training itself is already entertaining. And by that it is also logic, so people don't need to remember by heart. They can understand why things are how they are. Because that's the last thing I would like to mention. Universities sometimes just say on the question, why should I learn it? Well, because you have to. Or why is it in this case? Well, because that's how it is. This is wrong answers. So logic and reasoning is also a very big motivation for trainees to really gain access to this information and comprehend it successfully.
Yeah, I mean, those are some very valid points. Even as an adult, obviously, entertainment is important to continue the learning experience and to stay focused. So I want to ask a question about the hybrid model of Mindbreeze training that blends online courses with trainer-led sessions. So that method has proven successful. Can you elaborate on why this approach is effective and why this is a state-of-the-art educational process?
Yes, so this is actually a little bit from when I refer to the previous question. So we heard that people need to learn in their own channels and in their own pace. And this is mainly important in technical parts. So I will focus on this in a minute. The conceptual parts, though, things like big picture, like an overview of what the product is able to do, those things need a lot of discussion. They need discussion because everyone have different requirements, everyone have a different way of understanding, and it's so to say, as I would like to say, the fundamental things to know before using a product, to understand the basics, the architecture, how it works and what is the goal of the thing. And this is what we do usually in person, because it needs the discussion, it needs the exchange to really comprehend. But technical topics is something what you should never do in a big set of trainee classes. So I think one of the big issues out there is that people take groups of trainees and teach them a technical deep dive. This is horrible because some of them will be overwhelmed, so they will switch off anyway. The other ones will be underwhelmed, so they switch off because it's boring for them. And maybe 10% of the trainees actually take something from the training. And this is because, especially in the technical world, there's people with pre-knowledge. Some people don't have any idea about it at all. Some people remember fast and comprehend fast. Some people need a bit longer. And that's why we have those online courses for the technical parts, where people can actually dive into details if required, jump over topics if they know it already, and take the pace and granularity they need. And so combining the in-person training for the conceptual parts and for the technical parts, those online courses with the state-of-the-art technologies, this is proven success because it on the one hand addresses all the learning types and also allows the people to learn in their own pace.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So we learned about the consulting services mainly in our last episode, but despite having these consulting services, many of our customers still opt for additional training with the Academy and yourself. So what factors, and you may have touched on some of this already, what factors make our training programs a must-have choice in addition to our professional consulting services? And how do they complement or enhance the consulting experience for our clients?
Of course, so this is a general thing actually. This is not only related to Mindbreeze itself, but it's a general thing in technical areas. We live in a time where a lot of companies do the so-called outsourcing. Yeah? And this is typical for what you need consultants. So you purchase a product and you say, hey, consultants do all for me. And this is fine. But what the customers at the end forget is that those experts they rent, they pay for, they have their own terminology, they have their own way of talking because they have that much expertise. So especially to understand really what they mean and to be on the same level, you need a kind of a basic knowledge. This is the first thing. So training is required that you really know what you want from the consultants, you know. It's the same like if you purchase a car, you don't purchase it and drive it immediately. You first need some basic insights to know where is the wiper, how to turn it on, and those kind of things you should always know before you talk to the experts. That's the first thing. The second thing is actually there's some basic recurring tasks like maintenance, like update, like backup, those kind of things you can do on your own theoretically. And then you can use the consultants to do the actual cool work, to beef up your business processes, to tune where the 360 holistic view will integrate to make more value with your inside engine instead of just doing recurring tasks and do them on your own. And the last important thing, and this is, as you said before, I mentioned that already, it's important to understand what the product is capable of. And this is also something, this overview of the possibilities you gain, of course, also if you take a look at training, such as, for example, our overview training, which we have in our portfolio as well.
Yeah, so we know in business and every other aspect of life when you're thinking about getting a service that you kind of want to hear examples. So can you share any examples of how individuals or organizations have practically applied the knowledge gained from our academy training into their real-world challenges and business use cases?
Yes, and I need to refer to the previous question that was exactly such a use case. We have a customer, they purchased Mindbreeze and consulting, and they said they want to replace their inside engine with our inside engine. So they had a previous similar solution and replaced it with Mindbreeze. And then after time, they wanted an additional feature. And they had not really a clue of what Mindbreeze is capable of. So they had a developing team and they asked for how to use the SDK, and they read about it and then they developed the feature. And a few months later, they visited a training because they want to see what Mindbreeze is capable of out of the box. And what happened then is that during this lecture, they figured out that all those things they were developing beforehand already exists within the product. So they actually reinvented the wheel, or in short terms, they wasted employees' time by building something what is already available. And that's why I say training is really important, that you understand what is out of the box existing, because even if you take a look at the most sophisticated pre-sales presentations out there, even then, they will just scratch the surface of such complex products like inside engines. And when you take training in special areas or take an overview training, you at least know what's possible. That means you prevent reinventing the wheel, and you get ideas for future to enhance your use case further and further to really beef up your business value with the inside engines.
Well, Patrick, with that said, I think this is a good spot to wrap up our episode. So I want to thank you a lot for coming on and sharing insights and giving us knowledge about Mindbreeze Academy and the power of it. So thank you for coming. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to speak to you too.